Isabelle Legeron, Raw Wine 2018. Why'd you start Raw Wine? What's it about?
So raw wine is about actually a community of people who care about the same things, right? What we're passionate about is actually the planet, the environment, that little piece of land that we're farming. It's about caring about people who are drinking it. So I really care about what I eat. I really care about what I drink. I think it's more and more. We live in quite a we're in a very exciting time at the moment where we're just coming back from very heavy use of chemicals in the farming industry. The post Second World War, and then the 70s, 80s, 90s, where people really went all out to try and farm more and make more money and all this. And now we're at a stage where people are more and more conscious of farming and green issues. So the world has never been more aware about environmental issues and never more polluted. So for me, and that's the case for the wine industry. But we're at a time where, we've had years of, marketing blurb being fed to us where all wine is natural, all wine is terroir driven, all wine has been farmed by, small family of grower, like it's tiny team, where in fact most of the wine produced today is now produced by big companies, big brands. Most of the wine produced today has never been touched by a human hand. So you've got this is kind of the landscape of the wine industry. But so you've got this big wine world, big industrial wine industry. And there is a tiny little world, a tiny little drop in that big industry, which is obviously the whole of the low intervention, organic, biodynamic, natural wine movement. And that's really where my heart is, because that's my lifestyle. I go foraging, I collect my teas, all my herbs, my teas, I make my creams. I live a wholesome life, and I try and be a little bit, in touch with nature, because that's how I was brought up. So I created Raw Wine to sort of really connect with these growers, but also to showcase these growers and to create an opportunity for the buyers, people like Todd, from Dry Farm Wines, people who actually buy these bottles and bring it home. I wanted to bring everybody together. And I also wanted to show the world that, wine, not all wines are natural. Some wines have tons of additives, but not the wines at the fair. So there were a lot of issues I was trying to communicate about and really champion transparency. Then it all came out, in kind of a one big event that kind of started as a tiny event in London and now is, an international event with an event in Berlin, New York, and Los Angeles.
So where's it going to go from here? What's the next step?
So I would love to take it to other destinations, because if I was to listen to the growers, I would be in one different city every weekend, because they want to go, to Asia, they want to go in Northern Europe, they want to go a lot more in the States, because actually the States is really growing. So I would like to do a couple more destinations. I really want to also maybe, go into the more restaurant sort of industry. We've got now a name that people look for. The growers who work with us, need to be drunk on a daily basis. So if we could have just like one spot where people could drink all vintages or things they're not really used to seeing, that would be really nice. I really want to push the transparency agenda. So we need to really fight for labeling ingredient, on the back of a label, on a wine label, which doesn't exist. So there's still a lot of work to do. The minute we have actually a legislation that says you have to put the ingredients on the back of a label, my work is almost done. Because people don't really then need to come and be here to meet these growers, because they'll be able to read on the bottle exactly how the wine has been made. Obviously we're going to keep going, but what I mean is, like, at the moment there's no choice. You can't choose what you're drinking. We have to get to a place of choice. It's shocking that you don't know what's in the bottle of wine. How can you imagine that you're going to the store and you're picking up a pot, look at the pot of yogurt, right? Or an ice cream tub, right? Sometimes I pick up a pot of ice cream and I'm like, how can there be 12 or 15 ingredients? So I'm just like, well, okay, well, I'm not going to eat that. And then I just look at the pot of yogurt and I'm like, oh my God, what are those? You know, yogurt should just be like, you know, ferment and milk. And wine is the same. Wine really should be just grape juice. Okay, and wine now is so far removed from just being grape juice. You know, wine is just grape juice with enzymes, sulfites, yeasts, and then sterile filtration. You know, wine can be a live product, right? But most wines are completely dead. You know, there's no life in a bottle of wine. So if we can really get to this place where people have the choice, and I think we'll have, like, you know, the progress will be huge, and then the wine industry will look very different because people will think twice about adding that particular ingredient. You know, so this is, for me, if I could just leave one legacy, would be, you know, if I've contributed to this conversation, that would be really amazing.
What can we do? What can the average normal person do?
So people need to ask questions. People need to, you know, seek out the retailers who actually work with, you know, great growers who actually don't add anything. I think people need to stop buying wines until they really know what's going on in the bottle, and start putting pressure, you know, and maybe make some noise, petitions. You know, some Italian growers have started kind of a movement, and they're going to put a petition online where, you know, you'll be able to ask for the legislation to change, just even for organic wines, because people, you know, in the US, an organic wine, you know, doesn't have any sulfites, but you can add yeast, you know, right? For example, in EU, the organic wine legislation actually allows for tons of ingredients. So even when you have an organic wine in Europe, you're not guaranteed that you're going to be drinking just grape juice. So I think we just need to collectively start asking questions, start buying right, you know, buying the proper stuff. So then the bigger wine industry will start maybe feeling the impact, and so maybe that will put pressure then onto, you know, government agencies and so on. You know, the change is not going to come from any of the wineries. In fact, in Europe, you actually cannot list an ingredient. You cannot just say, you know, just grape juice, for example.
You're not allowed.
You're not allowed to actually put ingredients. So even if you have 2 ingredients, you're not allowed to. You can't put you know, the positive information. So there's, on a bottle of wine, you cannot put actually any information apart from what's legally required, which is the alcohol level and content sulfites. But content sulfites doesn't mean anything, because your content sulfites can be 10, 12, or it can be 300. So actually, you know, you don't know anything about what you're drinking. So you need to adopt the same philosophy as you would for food. You know, when you eat a piece of steak now or a piece of cheese, you know, I buy it from very specific suppliers because I know a bit about the history. Maybe they've worked with farmers. We just need to do the same with wine. You know, most people believe wine is completely natural, but that's just because of a very clever sort of marketing campaign saying, you know, wine is you know, all wine is natural and so on. You know, if we go out on the street, on the Strand right now with a microphone and say, how is wine made? You know, most people will say to you, oh, what do you mean? It's just grape juice. So there's no awareness. So it's just about building their awareness, really. So and just put the choice back into, you know, people's hands, so they can vote with their dollars. That's it. You know, I think the minute we get ingredient labeling on a bottle of wine, then, you know, we'll be in a very different. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you know, a lot of the time when I speak to bigger wine companies, for example, or more sort of, you know, government associations about wine, and they say, okay, what do you think about ingredient labeling? The biggest argument they say to me is, oh, we can't, because the consumers will not understand. They will be scared of, you know, so they think people are stupid and can't work out, you know, their own information out by themselves, as if, you know, people can't read the back of a product, or, you know. So this is complete BS. It will change, but it's not going to change by itself. So we have to keep pushing, and we have to keep asking questions. We have to keep buying the right thing, you know, so then it starts hurting, you know, the bigger industry. Yeah, so it will have to be at the EU level. It will have to be at, you know, at the American level. But I think if one country starts doing it and we raise enough awareness, you know, I think people have to. Yeah, exactly. People will have to do it. But, you know, in a way, like the world of raw wine, all the natural wine fairs and the natural growers and people who work with very low intervention and who are organic and so on, you know, we're all so connected and very underground. And I think if you start by tapping into this network, supporting the right business, you know, the right restaurant, storing these wines, the right wine stores, working with these wines, like the right health club or wine club, like Dry Farm Wines, for example, then you're making an impact. Because suddenly, you know, these growers are not very wealthy. You know, they actually, they can't get a loan from the bank because they work organically. So they only have, you know, their yields are low. The bank doesn't really believe in organic. It doesn't really sound good on paper or in terms of a business plan. So a lot of growers are actually really struggling, even just to make a living, you know, and every month is just like, are we actually going to make it? So, you know, the key, and we support a lot of growers, you know, and say, okay, don't worry, don't pay us, you know, just come and show your wines. And if you sell your wines, then maybe you can pay us later or whatever. So if we can really support these growers, so then they get really sort of financially, in a way, secure, then all of this, I think, can have a positive impact. And then they can produce more, be more comfortable, maybe grow, encourage more growers to do that. So, you know, by just doing our little bits, then I think already it's making a huge difference.
Something about Dry Farm?
Yeah, sure.
What's
I
your
mean,
opinion about it all?
I think it's, you know, it's an amazing concept. You know, it's something that actually hasn't really happened that much in Europe, and definitely not in the UK. But I think the idea of being able to buy wines directly, you know, and knowing that your wines has been analyzed, that your wine, you know, is good for you, doesn't have any of the additives, doesn't have any of the chemicals, and somebody has actually tested that for you, is amazing. Because to be honest, it doesn't really happen, you know, that much in the world. Even people who claim that they do organic, you know, there still could be some residues in there. So when you have, you know, an organization that is really behind and can guarantee that, you know, the bottle of wine that you're buying is actually what it says it is, that's extraordinary. And to do that on a commercial level and make that available to you, you know, is amazing. You know, and that's making a real difference, because I know that obviously the business model is working really well, and they're getting more and more people sort of like, you know, wanting these wines. And that's how you can make change, you know, is by having a business that is, you know, really actually successful, being able to buy wines from these guys, being able to buy these guys on time, or even, you know, ahead of delivering the wines. You know, that all of that makes a big difference, because we're in a very small industry, and we need people who are, you know, like, you know, with you, you know, able to really like take photos and like tell the story and engage with the growers, and, you know, all of that is really important. So, you know, I just want them to come over to the UK now and you know, in Europe, and actually offer the same services. By committing your values into a bottle of wine, by saying, I choose to drink these wines because they're better actually for the planet, they're better for the environment, they are sustainable, and they're better for me. That's the best form of support, and spread the word and encourage people to, you know, drink more of these wines. I mean, that's already like, that's all we need, you know, in a way, because, you know, we need people to drink the wines. It's one thing for me to just put on this event, get all the growers to come, you know, and showcase their wines and publish a catalogue. But if no one's drinking the wine, then this is not going anywhere. You know, that's, for me, that's the you know, we live in a bubble. I know what's good, and I know the great wines, and I know, you know, I'm in my little bubble, and everybody here is in a little bubble. But unless we can really go out there and get, you know, particularly people who maybe are not aware of what's going on in the wine industry, you know, we're not really growing, you know, we're not really going anywhere, because it's just kind of in that same circle. So for me, the main thing is for the wines to be drunk, appreciated, for somebody to open a bottle of wine and think, actually, I'm not just gonna down this, you know, actually, somebody's farmed this piece of land, somebody spent hours walking up and down these vines. You know, these vines, like, they're vibrant, they're full of life. There's, you know, butterflies, in the vineyards. There's birds everywhere. You know, all of that is so important. You know, and that actually happens very rarely. You know, but you're drinking that bottle of wine, and so much effort has gone into the farming, so much effort has gone into the winemaking. You know, to make sure that it's something which is still alive, has not been sterile filtered, has not been, you know, the microbiology hasn't been killed by tons of sulfites and other additives. And so if you can just take a moment and when you have your glass of wine, think about all of this, you know, then you know that you're actually winning, you know, and people are really getting what, you know, the importance of the work that people are doing. You know, it's about preserving life in the vineyard, life in the bottle, and life in your glass, so that you know that when you have that glass, that microbiology actually comes from that vineyard. You know, and you've got that glass in front of you in New York, in LA, you know, in Hillsburg or whatever. I mean, that's magical, you know.
Could you talk for just a moment about improving land through biodynamic?
Yeah, my gosh. I mean, look, when you know, and I when you walk into a vineyard, and to be honest, you actually you don't need to know anything about farming to know that something bad or good is being done. When you walk into a vineyard that is farmed completely conventionally, first of all, the first sign is like the soil is rock hard, you know, by compaction from machinery. So you can hardly, you know, big test is, can you actually put your hands in the soil and lift it up? Can you touch it? Can you see, you know, the soil should be all soft. You know, you should walk barefoot and actually almost bounce around in your vineyard, right? Whereas a lot of places are just like completely barren. There's nothing growing, and the soil is like really work hard, and you could not really grab any, you know, the sort of soil in your hand. And then when you touch the soil and you smell it, you know, it smells really beautiful. You know, there's aromas coming out of the soil, whereas something that's been farmed completely chemically, you know, there's kind of nothing, you know, coming out of it. And then there's tons of life. I mean, literally, when you walk into a vineyard, you know, and particularly when you move it from obviously conventional, and it takes years. You know, people say the conversion period officially is sort of 3 years for a lot of like, you know, certification bodies, but actually it takes years to properly convert a vineyard, to have it from no soil life to a lot of soil life. And it's only when you have a vineyard and a soil which is very alive with obviously, you know, microbiology and you know, fungi and all of this going on, that you have a connection between, you know, the roots, the soil, then that intakes into the grapes. That's only possible if you have a soil which is vibrant with life, and that takes time to bring the you know, the life back, to bring the worms back. You know, the worm population has been disappearing like so quickly, because nowadays, you know, and if you don't have worms, you don't have life, because they're the ones, you know, recycling everything, digging, sort of, you know, creating little tunnels, aeration, and so on. But, you know, these little guys are disappearing. We don't know what's going on underground, so we don't really respect it, you know. So we are, you know, I have so much respect for nature. You know, nature has a way of balancing itself. You know, everything is integral. All the little elements sort of work in harmony. When you take something out, you take the harmony out. So, you know, I think you can go out in the vineyard and see, you know, is there erosion? Erosion, like if there's no grass growing, then obviously there's going to be erosion. Erosion is one of our biggest problems. We're losing a lot of, you know, sort of soil is being washed away. So, you know, walking around in a very well farmed land, whether it's biodynamically, with permaculture, with the Fukuoka method or whatever, it's an amazing experience. You've got wild, you know, salads growing. You can literally, you know, pick flowers. You know, there's birds, insects everywhere, spiders. You know, all of that is normal. So you know when you're walking into a garden rather than some kind of like concreted, almost over vines are being drip fed with chemicals.
What does love mean to you?
Love.
What does it mean?
Love for me is about respect. You know, it's about being humble. It's about, understanding that we're completely connected, with nature, with for me, other beings. I mean, I really believe that we are, we're all, within the same energy, and I have, a lot of respect for animals. I mean, I'm a big nature lover, so I love animals, I love dogs, I love insects, I love plants. I have a lot of respect when I collect plants to make teas. I really think about this plant and the energy that the plant is giving me. So I think for me, love is about respecting, and is about humility, but just about understanding that we're just such a tiny part of a much bigger equation, but we've obviously made a lot of damage. But when I see people who treat animals or plants without any respect, I know that I'm probably not going to get on with them very well. With something or an animal which is pretty defenseless, how can you just go and destroy a forest, when the trees have so much to give us and so much to contribute to what we're doing. So I guess that's what love is.
That's awesome. Thank you, Isabelle. It was so wonderful. I really appreciate your time and what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for asking such great questions.